Yo, what is going on, everybody? Isaac Mashman here. Hope that you are having a fantastic day so far. Today, you are listening to an awesome interview with somebody who I would say wasn't quite an introduction, but the networks and I guess the algorithms kind of fell into place. And I have Dennis Yu on for Chase the Vision with Isaac Mashman, the show that is all about helping you get results through sharing my experiences in business, life, and personal growth, and also having amazing guests like Dennis to share their stories and experiences as well. Dennis, I could go on and talk about for an hour myself and not even give him a chance to speak because his roster is quite respectable. He's the founder of Blitzmetrics. He was the initial engineer at Yahoo a long time ago, and he developed a lot of the internal analytics behind that. He's spoken on literally hundreds of stages, and quite an honor to have him on. So, Dennis, how are you doing today?
Man, Isaac, always a good day with you, my friend.
Oh, come on now. So, man, like I said off camera, there are 1,000 different directions that we could go in, but I also want to talk and kind of take a step back and talk about your personal life and a little bit less of the technicalities. We'll get into the technical stuff in a couple of minutes, but I want to know a little bit about you. Like, where are you from? Where did you grow up? And what was the childhood like?
Well, I grew up all over the place. I lived in 13 different places. I didn't speak English, so I was made fun of and
Hmm.
bullied. And the first words I learned, because my parents didn't want to speak English at home, otherwise I'd have a broken accent, were words that you typically get in trouble for. So I was sent to the principal's office a whole bunch of times. And little kids can be so mean. So I didn't really have any friends. So I just became a mathlete. I was so good at math. I traveled and competed in math competitions, and I'm Asian, gives me an extra advantage. And I just found that there was, for me, solace in things that were mechanical. And I learned to speak English pretty well. I represented California in the Scripps Howard National Spelling Bee in Washington, D.C. And I found that I was lonely, yet I was still an achiever. And things like cross country gave me an opportunity to meet other people, to learn how to have some personal aspect, to be able to build friends. Most people are just natural at building friends, but I just wasn't. I didn't know how to talk to people. I was a dork. I had clothes from Kmart,
Mm.
right? And it's weird because you fast forward now 30 years later, and I've learned public speaking. I've learned how to be on camera. I've learned how to write articles. A lot of people think it's natural, things like personal branding and networking. People today will see that I'm hanging out with well-known people, but it wasn't like that at all. And I want people to know, especially if you're young in your career, that this is a skill that you can learn and develop. Things like charisma, you absolutely can learn these things.
Yeah, I was actually listening to a couple of different episodes today, just from various mentors that I study, and one of the recurring themes was confidence. And it's not something that is just you're born with; it's something that you develop. And so, going from that student and that child who couldn't speak English to learning English, and it seems like you probably found, I guess you could say, almost a sense of happiness by yourself, right? You and your thoughts and just kind of tearing apart remote. Like you're probably that kid who was breaking everything apart, trying to put it back together and kind of seeing what you could come up with, right? Maybe sketching down ideas in class. Were your parents entrepreneurial at all, or what
No,
were their specialties?
no, they were both engineers. My dad
Okay.
got a PhD in mechanical engineering and he's got a bunch of patents to his name. My mom did computer science, a lot of programming on the mainframes, both very technical, very introverted. So I was going to be one of those as well. I thought maybe I would become a doctor or piano player or one of those kinds of Chinese stereotypes. Not at all an entrepreneur or doing things in marketing.
Interesting. So when was your first entrepreneurial, like the first time that you kind of thought, hey, I could go ahead and start my own business or start my own gig? Because I imagine growing up, you ended up going to school in London, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yeah.
then from there, you landed the gig at Yahoo. What was that transition like going from, traditional high school education to going to college and then finding and landing a gig?
Well, there's a lot of different things. So in high school, my favorite thing to do was run. And I made the varsity cross country team as a freshman, even as a midget, only 5 feet tall, and I weighed literally 100 pounds. And I was good at things like the SAT or tests and that kind of thing. So to be able to transition into the business world required that I needed to learn how to build relationships and remember people's names and know how to have a conversation. And I was so afraid of meeting other people. I remember freshman year at SMU, Southern Methodist University, as an undergrad, I was lucky to be a president scholar, meaning I was on a full scholarship for it, leadership and this kind of thing. And we went to this party of these donors who had contributed so much money that they had their names on the building. And here we are, just 20 or 30 of us that are representing the university. We're the future of the university, and they put all this money into us, and we're supposed to talk about all of these high-end sorts of topics. So I would study the Wall Street Journal. I would do all this reading because I wanted to appear intelligent and represent the school properly at these fancy events where they have so many different forks and knives, you're not sure like which one to pick up. And you could probably identify with this. I didn't know what to do. So sitting at a table or walking around where there's lots of people dressed up real fancy, these people who are really successful, these billionaires who owned oil companies or ran American Airlines, for example, that I just didn't know what to say. So I went to the bathroom and I locked myself in. And other people would come in and they'd knock on the door and they'd say, "Hey, is anyone in there?" Like, "Yep, I'm still inside." Like, "Are you coming out there? Because I got to use the bathroom." And that's what I would do at these different events because I was so scared of people. And I had a mentor who happened to be the CEO of American Airlines. And he taught me about public speaking. And he taught me about confidence, what you just mentioned, Isaac. And I realized it's just a matter of getting practice and overcoming that fear. I joined Toastmasters, so I learned how to speak. So every Wednesday at lunchtime, at noon, we would speak, and I learned how to talk on different topics. Could be things like table topics, or giving a 3-minute introduction about myself or a hobby that I have. And that was really the introduction to me becoming a business, marketing, entrepreneur kind of person, is learning how to talk to other people without feeling afraid or having imposter syndrome or not knowing what to say. And it wasn't an overnight thing. It took me several years, but that was the key difference, because I thought that the key was study more and be more and more knowledgeable. And I learned so much that I thought, well, I'm going to be way ahead of all these other kids because I've studied more than they did. I studied for summer school. I studied on the weekends. I studied in the evenings. I spent most of my time in the public library reading thousands of books. I've read over 4,500 books. But I realized it's actually relationships. It's not about the knowledge in your head.
I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions too, because I'm a young guy, Dennis. Like I'm 21, and a lot of the people that I'm connected with and that I see and that I talk to, they're around my age or maybe in their mid 20s, early 30s, and there's the whole entrepreneur mentality online, like read everything, study a bunch of mentors, and I think that you can actually find too many mentors and learn from too many people, and that's something I've seen too, to where now instead of going and trying to learn from literally dozens and every single person I see in shiny guy who has a jet, rather find a select few and then really dive deep into their story and dive deep into what they have going on. So growing up, you had your parents kind of to look to as the the mentor of, hey, they're an engineer, you could probably have good intellectual conversations with them. But then fast forward, you had the CEO of American Airlines. And then did you have any other role models or mentors that you were really like prone to learning from? Or was it just kind of like the one guy and that's it?
I was super lucky. I went to a boarding school and I met a lot of rich kids whose parents, for example, owned Walmart or founded Best Buy or whatnot, really successful people. I went to Choate Rosemary Hall as a boarding school. So you can imagine the kinds of people that were like John F. Kennedy went there, right? And it was because of the connections that I made in those families. I didn't even realize it at the time. I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. We're going to go fly to this cool place on someone's private jet and have a good time. I really didn't think anything of it because I didn't understand money. I didn't understand networking. I was just here with these other kids, and these other kids were just like me. We're here going to a boarding school, we're having fun, but it was the connections from these other people that I learned so much because it wasn't an interview. It wasn't going to meet someone at some sort of fancy event. It was just hanging out at their house and having lasagna with my friend Mark Gesso and his father, Larry Gesso, who ran the Mercer Management Companies, multi-billion-dollar company. And I learned things just from sitting on the couch or at dinner where Larry would give me advice, kind of like a surrogate father in a way. And I had a lot of these folks who were successful in business. And it wasn't that I had a lot of them. It was that I just wasn't ashamed to ask questions of these people. So one of my friends, his father put the money into starting Best Buy and then the Costco. And I remember being on the ski slopes one time, and we were going up the lift, and he pulled out his cell phone and he said, buy 50,000 shares of Best Buy right now. And I looked at him and I said, what made you decide that you wanted to do that? And he went into his analysis of how he thought it was undervalued, or how he was doing different things, or when he sold several companies to, what is it, General Electric? Yeah, he sold several companies at General Electric for $200 million. And I said, wow, how do you sell a company? What happens when you sell a company? Do you know what happens, Isaac, when you sell a company for what the different steps are to be able to do that?
I could probably list off a couple, but not in depth, and give you an analysis of it.
You go to YouTube, you could
Of
listen to
course.
podcasts or whatever, but it's not the same thing, because there's a lot of different details that are not going to be public on how those kinds of deals are done, because some of them are embarrassing. Some of them require certain kinds of connections and relationships that people are not going to talk about publicly. And it was having that extra benefit of mentorship like that has made all the difference. So people will look at me and they'll say, oh, well, Dennis is so smart, or he was lucky that he was able to get into Yahoo, and because of the experiences there, that gave him access to all these opportunities because he happened to be there early when the .com thing started. Or, oh yeah, Dennis ran the digital marketing for the Golden State Warriors. And of course, anyone who was in that position, they would have also been successful because the Warriors became, successful and all this. And they missed the point. It was all of those relationships that happened 10 years before that introduced me to other people, who introduced me to, for example, Kenny Lauer at a meetup in San Francisco where I was teaching how to do Facebook ads. And then he became the head of digital marketing, or the head of marketing at the Golden State Warriors. Then he hired us. And then all of these things that you look at where there's a success, you can trace all the way back multiple stages to where something happened that people don't recognize. They only see the success here at the very end. So I've had many mentors, thank goodness, that believed in me. And if it wasn't for that, nothing I have would have ever happened.
And I think that somebody who maybe doesn't come from a similar background, it would be really easy to judge and say, oh, so Dennis pretty much had everything handed to him on a silver platter. But there's a massive difference between having everything handed to you and then actually going and taking advantage of the situations that you're in your case, asking questions and, being in this kind of state of constant and unconscious observance. Like, you were observing everybody. You were paying attention to what was going on, how their body, I imagine their language, right? How they were sitting at dinner. Right now, as you're talking, like you're having a very specific posture. And I wouldn't be surprised if you maybe picked that up from one of your old friends in college and one of their parents without even realizing it, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, there's this but this concept of unconscious competence, to where you don't even know what you're doing. You don't know that you're doing the right thing. And that's kind of the state and the energy that you were in. And so let's talk about the power of networking, because I myself have seen this, and I saw it early on, thankfully through church and through some people that I used to be, really close with back home in Jackson when I was still in the city. And I don't come from money or any of that situation, but I saw that these, people were invested with the people at City Hall, and then the mayor and all the representatives. And then from there, I noticed that my teacher, who was actually from, I believe, Turkey originally, and then he studied in the Philippines, and he came to the States to start a school. He was extremely well connected to where if you talk to anybody, they would know who he was within the city and within those upper brackets. So what has been, how did you end up getting that position at Yahoo? Was that because of a connection that eventually, they saw that you were intelligent enough to actually hold the position, and then, had the personality and the traits that would make you a good fit?
Well, it's a mix of those. So a lot of people would think that I'm a really good search engine engineer or whatnot. And I was. I legitimately can go toe to toe with anybody to talk about what search engines do and don't, and how to rank and that kind of thing, right? A lot of people talk about SEO or influencer marketing or personal branding, but they haven't actually done the thing. And they talk about how to make $1 million or but they've never done the thing. And so I did have enough expertise 20 some years ago to be able to get into that position. But here's a couple things people don't know. When I first started at Yahoo, I thought I wasn't going to get fired my first week on the job, because I didn't know what I was doing, because the other people that were there in the office. Now, imagine when it's a smaller company before it becomes this multi-billion-dollar giant. And the people there that are literally in the cubes next to me are the people who created the technologies that we use today, who built it, like Rasmus Lerdorf, who invented PHP. I'm peeing next to him at the bathroom, right? And he's saying, Dennis, what's going on? I'm like, I went mountain biking yesterday, right? Have you checked out this one cool restaurant that, things like that. And it's those connections that are, they create the unconscious competence that you talk about. Because when you are in proximity to these people, then you learn subconsciously. You just pick up their vibe. You pick up mannerisms, just like you probably pick up things that your mom or dad say. You catch yourself doing those things without realizing that you've learned it from the habit, from proximity, which is being around these other people. Now, the way I got the job at Yahoo was because I had a mentor who happened to be the CEO of American Airlines. And American Airlines needed a website back in 1997. And if I had not built websites back in 1990, which is 30 years ago, I would have never been in position to then be asked to build a website for a major company. Because prior to American Airlines, I built websites for some of these other companies. Now, this is before social media. This is before the mobile phone became more than just making phone calls, right? This was back when it was just websites, none of this other stuff happening. And because I took a few actions there that came from other doors being open to me, and because I had a mentor that cared about me, he was able to open those doors for me. So I had to take action and achieve something, and at least show interest in something, and at least demonstrate that I can, make money, or I can do some kind of skill. I need to have some kind of skill to then allow someone else to amplify me and open those kinds of doors. So the networking and the connections that happen from a mentor have to be balanced by you getting good at one thing or two things. Because if I was just playing video games and doing Fortnite and skateboarding in the park, and there's nothing wrong with those things, but if I was just doing those things, and the CEO of American Airlines is thinking, oh, I need someone to build a website. Who do I know? Oh, Dennis. He's been building websites. We should have Dennis build the website. And that's how executives make decisions. That's how power players make decisions. So if I had not told these other folks, oh yeah, I've been building these websites, then those wouldn't have happened. It creates a butterfly effect. And because of what happened at American Airlines, and I did a pretty decent job there, took the thing from nothing to $3 million a day in sales. Haters would say, oh yeah, well, anyone who would have built a website back then, people were going to buy tickets on the internet anyway, so it doesn't matter. Well, whatever. Okay, I was there at the right time, who knows? But because of that, that then opened doors for me to get into Yahoo. So you could do something that makes you $10 right now, and you might think, well, that's not really a big deal. Or I get a client and I film their videos, they're a local business like a restaurant, I make $100, not a big deal. Yeah, but you know what? That can then turn into thousands of dollars. Just like our friend Jake Paul. We built this course that you get by the time you see this, maybe it'll be live. And Jake talks about how he was a contractor for $12 an hour doing landscaping. Can you imagine that? Jake Paul, the boxer, fighter, influencer guy, was doing landscaping for $12 an hour. But he then learned how to get more deals and more homes that wanted landscaping done. And he started charging $20 an hour and subbing out to his friends. So then he was being a broker because he first learned how to do landscaping. Then he started getting these deals at $20, $25 an hour and then paying his other friends $12 an hour. And then pretty soon he had a whole business. But if he didn't start by becoming a landscaper himself first, he could have never started this landscaping company, which then turned into negotiating and business skills and being able to speak to other people and Disney and Vine and Team 10 and all those kinds of things. So it all started from building some basic skills and relationships and communication and working with other people that keeps multiplying. $100 turns into $1,000, turns into $100,000, turns into $100 million. And I think people miss what those different steps are along the way. They want to shortcut and jump straight to being this super successful Elon Musk kind of person.
Mm-hmm. And the time that it takes in order to get from that $10 sale or that $5 sale with a t-shirt to, $1,000 call or $20,000 speaking engagement or something like that, it doesn't have to take as much time as people truly think it does. I mean, it can take years, but it doesn't have to take decades like many believe. And that can be accomplished through a concept that you were exercising before it became a popular term. And I mean, you could go back to 1930s Think and Grow Rich with Napoleon Hill, where he talks about personal branding in the form of organization, organized planning. But you were really building out your personal brand as that young kid to where not only you had the traits, like we mentioned, and then you also had the expertise and the know-how. And so that CEO is like, hey, who am I going to think of? I'm going to think of Dennis, and then that got you into the door at the right time. And so
Right.
something that you've done over the past 2 decades since, graduating and going from Yahoo to launching Blitzmetrics back in, I believe, 2008, 2009,
Mhm.
has been building out your personal brand. And you've spoken on 700 plus stages in 17 plus countries, if I read the numbers right. And I don't know when that piece of information was updated last, so that number's probably skyrocketed a little bit.
Bigger,
What
but
has,
doesn't matter.
yeah, not neither here nor there.
If there's 1,000, I mean, really,
Stay
what's the
humble.
difference, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, what has been the biggest contributing factor to building out your personal brand? And you're not somebody who is like, you're not one of these guys who has just come into social media within the past 2 years. Like, you go back prior to the age of gurus and the Instagram models and all the flex to the glitz and the glamour. And that's why I'm especially interested in the conversation to know, what were your early steps of building out your personal brand?
This is something that might surprise people. I don't work on my personal brand. And I don't think anybody should work on their personal brand, because I think other people should work on your personal brand. Because if I was working on my personal brand, then I'd be talking about me. Me. Look at me. Look at my success. Give me money. Look at this. Isn't it so much better to have Cole Hatter, for example, say, Dennis is the best in the world at Facebook ads, versus me saying, hey, I'm really good at Facebook ads. You should hire me. Or having the co-founders of Yahoo say, yeah, Dennis is one of the top engineers out there on the planet, versus me saying, oh yeah, I'm really good at SEO. Look at me, right? My personal brand and your personal brand is the sum of what other people have to say about you, not what you have to say. And therefore, building your personal brand is what other people do for you. But then if you're nobody, how do you get other people to talk good about you? You do like what Isaac is doing. You start a podcast. Because when you edify other people on your podcast, no one's going to say, today I have Isaac Mashman and he's like a pretty smart guy. He's okay. I couldn't find a better guest. So today I'm just going to interview Isaac, right? Instead, you're going to say, Isaac is a killer young adult at 21. Look at how successful he is in building his brand. His time's $1,500 an hour. Do you want to learn how to do that? Tune in to the Coach U Show, where Isaac and I are going to talk about how you can do the same thing, right? So you edify somebody, just like you edified me at the beginning of this, right? So the more you edify other people, like a mentor, like someone you respect, not in an ass-kissing way, but in a way of humility where you're learning from their material. For example, this book just came out, pretty heavy. It's my buddy Newton Lee, he runs the digital marketing for the Transhumanist Party, and he's a good friend of mine. I happen to be in this book. And when I honor him, he's going to turn around and honor me. So when Jake Paul came to me and said, hey, let's build a course, everyone I talked to, when I asked them who should help me build this course, they said, you should talk to Dennis Yu, right? So here I am, right? Dennis, what do we need to do? And I said, well, tell me, what do you want to have this course be about? Well, I want to help people, young adults, be able to grow their brand and become influencers and have a life where they're able to make money and not worry about their bills. Maybe the school system isn't working for them. How do we do that? And I said, well, tell me, how do we weave your experience into something that other people can benefit from? And so we had several conversations, and he said, well, okay, based on this, we should have a path where you can be an influencer, or you can learn how to create video, or you can start an e-commerce shop, or here's my buddy Dan Fleshman who holds these events that people pay $100,000 to attend. So let's bring all these other people together, I said. Let's bring all these people in your network that know how to do these different things, and let's have each of them teach a section. And then we'll build a whole course around it, right? Build a whole program around it and make it interactive and make a video around it. And that's how Jake Paul is building my brand. Because when you see videos of Jake Paul and me, people are going to say, I get Jake Paul, but who's this Asian kid that's with Jake Paul, and why, or guy, why is this Asian guy with Jake Paul, right? So that's building my brand. You get other people to build your brand by doing good things for them so they reciprocate. That's what people don't understand about brand building. I think this influencer Instagram, TikTok thing has caused most people to have the wrong idea about personal branding. They think it's about Lamborghinis and outward signs of success, instead of, let's edify other people like what you're doing, Isaac. You're doing research before you interview guests on your podcast. I believe everyone listening now should start a podcast. And you literally just declare that you have a podcast and you start interviewing people with your iPhone, whatever it is, on Zoom like this. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you ask them about what they've done. You do an hour or two of research in advance so you can be smart about it. And that will build your brand. Because Isaac, how many episodes have you done now?
I've done 75, and then I also had a show booked prior to this, and I've launched a couple other shows too, so it's been plenty.
And how's that building your brand?
Phenomenally. I mean, and here's the other thing too, Dennis. That I mean, you're so passionate enough. You're destroying your studio setup right here, moving all the books around, man. I love it. But I would say to anybody that is wanting to start a podcast, do 50-50. 50% interviews and 50% monologues. And that's a challenge for a lot of people starting out. But my first couple podcasts on my other show, they were recorded on an iPhone. And then from there, it kind of just scaled over the years to where now I got the studio set up and I reinvested back into this. And because I saw it as an opportunity to scale, to talk to other people and to spread a message at the end of the day. And I was consciously building out my personal brand while having monologues, to where I wasn't relying on the audience of other people to build up my personal brand. And so I was able to connect with other people one-on-one through my show. But then I started introducing guests too. And then that kind of combines into this really great mesh to where it's like, now you have people who know you for who you are, but also you have other audience members and audiences that are coming over to you. And so you covered a lot of really phenomenal information right there. And that's the other thing too about being in association with the right people. Being seen with the right people can automatically boost your credibility. I mean, I didn't know anything about you, and I'm not the kind of guy to where I'm going to trust a verification badge, right? And we connected on Facebook, and you have the verification badge. Like, cool, that's something that I think people should strive for, but it's not like the end all be all. But
Doesn't
I
mean
knew
anything. A lot of people
right.
think the blue check. I have blue checks all over the place. It doesn't mean anything.
Exactly. But because you were on Zachary Babcock's show, I automatically had a level of trust with you. And Zach's not the biggest guy in the world either, but the caliber and the kind of guy he is, the quality of guy he is, automatically speaks, I guess you could say, I'm trying to think of the best word to use. It speaks a lot about who you are for him to want to be on your show and vice versa. And I like how you threw in on the Coach U show, because you do have a podcast coming out. By the time this episode drops, it might already be out, or it might be a couple weeks away, but let's talk about your podcast.
Yeah. I love to interview people who've done something and are willing to share how to do it authentically, screen sharing, step by step, like a recipe that other people can follow. You see a lot of people out there that are successful, but can they break it down to exactly the step-by-step process so that anyone who has those ingredients can achieve that same result? Just like Nestle, Toll House, whatever, cookies, right? You like chocolate chip cookies. Okay, if I had chocolate chips and sugar and butter and flour and whatever, and I put it in a bowl and I mix it and I put it in the oven and I do the whole steps of the recipe and I get chocolate chip cookies at the end. If I document this recipe exactly, do you think, Isaac, that you could make that same chocolate chip cookie recipe?
Oh, of course.
Okay, so
sounds good right now too.
Name your favorite food, or from your favorite restaurant or whatnot.
Sushi. I don't have a favorite sushi restaurant, but definitely sushi.
Okay, so sushi. Let's say you have a place that you like to eat sushi at. Do you think that if you had the ingredients, even if you don't know anything about how to make sushi or whatever, but you had Hero Dreams of Sushi standing right next to you, showing you how to do it, but he wasn't the one who's actually doing it, he's just there advising you, do you think that you could produce sushi at the same quality as that restaurant?
100%.
Okay. Now, what I want to do is apply that in any area of expertise related to digital marketing or entrepreneurship. And I'm super lucky that I know a lot of very successful entrepreneurs. They've started real estate agencies, software companies, consulting, influencer networks, whatever it is. And I've been able to sit down and ask them, how did you achieve X as a result? And tell me exactly what you did it step by step. Let's document it. Let's turn it into a course. Let's make videos around it. Don't just talk to me theoretically about how you need to hustle and work hard and never give up. And that, yeah, that's great. Motivation and all those things, that's great. But show me how you did it. I want you to log into your Facebook ad accounts and show me what you did. An hour ago, I interviewed somebody who has spent $200 million on Facebook ads. And he's also responsible for most of the other people that have scaled in e-commerce and Facebook ads. And we went through step by step how he did it. And I asked him questions. And I knew enough about the topic to be able to ask them some really smart questions so that anyone else who's already spending $1,000 or $2,000 a day, they can spend $10,000 a day. They can spend $1 million a day, which he and I both have for other companies, right? So think about all the people that you know in your network that have achieved a certain result, not because of random, not because their parents handed them something, not because of something that you don't have access to, but using ingredients that you and I have access to, we can achieve a certain kind of result that other people can implement. So my podcast is about interviewing other people, not just because I want to have Zach Babcock on my show, but anyone listening should be able to, if they want to achieve the result that Zach Babcock has achieved, they should be able to follow those same principles and those same steps. And that's what I think makes my podcast a little bit different, especially because I'm an engineer and I think about things in a step-by-step process, systems kind of way. That's how it's different than other podcasts where people will just talk about whatever.
Interesting. And that's also how you can vet some people who don't know or do know what they're talking about. I mean, obviously you're going to vet them before you have them on the show, but having somebody on the show and then asking them the in-depth questions like on the spot, that's something I've seen too, not on my own podcast, thankfully, but listening to some other shows like where there's a guest, they get asked the difficult questions and they're just kind of like, they don't know how to respond. And, you know, that's how you can kind of get the truth out to the world. Now, why has it taken you, not in a negative way of asking, but it's taken you some time to get a show launched? Why haven't you launched a show like, let's say 5 years ago or 4 years ago, but now in 2021 moving forward, like why is this the perfect time?
I waited 20 years because I didn't think I was competent enough. I could have probably done it earlier because I had enough expertise in certain areas, but I'm kind of imposter syndrome where I think I don't want to put myself out there unless I know I'm really, really good and that people can ask me whatever question on it and there's no way that I'm going to get stumped. So when it comes to things like Facebook marketing, I've spoken on hundreds of stages and I take Q&A at the end. I've done thousands of webinars. Take Q&A, and now I think I've heard pretty much any question someone could ever ask about that or about SEO, right? Worked at the search engines. I know that material cold. Things change all the time, so I'm always keeping up to date. But for me, I think I waited too long because I knew enough maybe 15 years ago to start. But for me, I'm like, there's so many people out there that are already super knowledgeable. I don't feel like I want to contribute to that, or they're going to know more than me and they're going to expose me as being fraudulent because there's some things I don't know. Or what if I get embarrassed and someone asks me about something and I'm just stumped and look like an idiot? But I realized that the person or the situation that was holding me back was actually me. And I knew plenty enough. And it doesn't mean if you know nothing, just go ahead out there and just declare that you're an expert and beat your chest and you can fake it till you make it. I'm not saying that, but there's kind of a sweet spot in terms of you know enough to be able to talk about it so that other people can repeat what you have. And then there's to the point where you know it so well, you can write textbooks about it. But I think there's you can do it well before where I drew the line at the point of, all right, I am definitely world-class in a couple of these areas. Now it's time to start. I could have started earlier.
Got it. Now, imposter syndrome is something that is thrown around like a buzzword, and at the same time is something that everybody does experience. You, as the engineer that you are, you do have a different way of thinking rather than, you know, just an overall general way of thinking about imposter syndrome. I'm curious to know, do you have like some strategic step-by-step approach for overcoming it in your own life? Because I'd be interested to kind of get that perspective rather than the stereotypical hoorah motivational, listen to, you know, a bunch of gurus for 25 hours every morning.
And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that if that's what gets you going in the morning. Here's how I look at imposter syndrome. There is a hidden sister of imposter syndrome, and it's called Dunning-Kruger. Have you heard of Dunning-Kruger? This will change your life. Most people, when they think about imposter syndrome, it's pre-assumed that they're already an expert, and it's a matter of just motivation and just go ahead and put yourself out there, believe in yourself, you know more than you think. It's a rah-rah cheerleader kind of thing, and everyone wants to believe that you're actually more than you think you are, because who wouldn't want to believe that, right? The other side, Dunning-Kruger, is you are overestimating your capability. And I see a lot of people starting off in digital marketing and influencer marketing and social media, and they declare that they're a pro. They declare they started this podcast. They declare their ambition to make $1 million by next month, but they don't actually have the competence. And so there's someone who would like to be a surgeon. And so they watch a bunch of YouTube videos. They start operating on people without having any expertise. They kill the patients and they think, okay, I killed that last patient, but if I just believe hard enough, my next surgery in an hour, it's going to be a success. But they kill that patient too. And they think it's a matter of motivation. There's a friend of mine, I'm not going to name him. He's in the world of real estate and he wants to help real estate agents be able to sell more homes. Now, he's not a real estate agent. He knows nothing about real estate. He's never sold a home. He's never helped a real estate agent sell a home before. So he goes on to Facebook and he says, hey, are you a real estate agent? Would you like to be able to sell more homes? Sign up with me and I'm going to show you the 7 secrets on how you can use Facebook to drive more home sales. And he does that over and over again. And each time he'll get almost nothing. Maybe he'll get 1 or 2 people. And then those people will get on the phone and they'll ask him, so have you sold any homes before? No, I haven't. Well, have you worked with other real estate agents and successfully done that before? No, I haven't. Okay, well then why would I work with you? Because I'm going to give you a money back guarantee. And if it works, then you'll pay me more money. Okay, how does it work? Pay me $1,000 now. And then if we sell some homes, you're going to keep paying me $1,000 every month. Okay, sure. And so he'll do that. Once in a while, he'll get on the phone and someone will agree, but 99% of the time they say, sorry, I don't want to work with you. You've never done this thing before. So you misled me in your motivational video about this. But then the ones he has been able to take on, every one of them's failed because he's not been able to sell a single home because he doesn't know how to do Facebook ads. And he came to me and asked for help. And he said, hey, how do I get more clients? Because I need to get more clients so I can spin up my real estate agency. And I said, you need to learn how to do Facebook ads, bro. No, I can just hire a VA to do that kind of stuff. I'm a business owner and I need to scale my business, get more clients. And I said, your issue is not getting more clients. Your issue is you don't have the expertise. And so every time he fails, he will get back into his Gary V, listening to motivational stuff and get himself all pumped up. Then goes back on the Facebook and he says, are you a real estate agent? And would you like to be able to learn the secret way on how you can use Facebook to be able to drive more leads? I'm going to show you how. Click on the message button and let's schedule a free 15-minute consultation, right? Have you seen that before? Seen a
I
lot of
haven't,
that.
because
Well,
if I
there's a
see
lot of
those
that.
ads, I hit the 3 little dots to say not interested.
There's a lot of that. So that's Dunning-Kruger. Dunning-Kruger is the ugly sister that no one knows about related to imposter syndrome. And Dunning-Kruger is trying to do something that you don't have the competence or proof of to be able to do. So if you have done something step by step repeatedly 3 times, then you have credibly, logically demonstrated that you've done that thing. And so you can talk about it. It's not a matter of confidence. You've done it. You can show your proof. Other people like your customers can talk about it, right? I don't need to talk about my stuff. I've got the Golden State Warriors talking about me. I've got Mark Zuckerberg talking about me. I don't need to talk about what I've done with Facebook ads. I've got the NBA talking about what we did with Facebook ads, right? So that's Dunning-Kruger. Now, the way you unite Dunning-Kruger with imposter syndrome is something we call learn, do, teach. Learn the stuff from someone who has actually done it before, not from somebody who read what someone else had to say, but from the actual person who's done it before. Do it, follow the recipe step by step and achieve the result. Can you make the chocolate chip cookies? You screwed up the first time, repeat the recipe until you achieve chocolate chip cookies. Then you can talk to other people about how you can create chocolate chip cookies and promote the recipe. And you can promote that recipe with confidence because you've done it yourself. So the idea of learn, do, teach is an inoculation against Dunning-Kruger. Dunning-Kruger is all those people out there overrepresenting their skill, talking about how to do something when they haven't done it, like the 21-year-old life coach. Dude, don't be giving expertise on something that you haven't done, right? There's a woman who came to me and said, hey, I've got this course on how to become a millionaire and make your first $1 million. Sounds good, right? And I said, okay, great. Show me the course. Well, I'm still building it, but can you help me sell it? And I'll give you a piece of the profit. I'm like, maybe, but have you actually done it before? No, I haven't, but other people told me the best way to make money on the internet is to talk about making money on the internet, which is true. So I said, okay, I think maybe I could. She said, what's the price? I said, $1 million. What? I can't afford that. I could maybe afford like $1,500. Can we start, maybe a payment plan? And then as we make money, I'll give you a piece of the profit. And I said, maybe, but it sounds like you need to take the course on how to make your first $1 million, then come back to me. So there's a lot of people that are overrepresenting their own capability. So that's why I think the mentorship angle that we talked about earlier is so important, because when you work with a mentor who has achieved the result that you want, you can mirror what they've done, and it accelerates what would typically be a 10 or 20 year window. It collapses it down to maybe a year or two or whatever it is to achieve the result, because you have a mentor who has achieved that very result, showing you how. I think that's the thing that most young adults are missing. You need direct mentorship from someone who has done the thing that you want to do. Not Elon Musk or Richard Branson, unless that's what you want to be. But odds are each of us knows somebody that has done the thing that we want. We can learn from that person. We can take steps in a step-by-step checklist to do it. Then we can teach other people. Some people want to jump straight to teaching without learning and doing first. See what I mean, Isaac? That's how you
100%.
overcome imposter syndrome. A lot of people think that you should go for confidence instead of competence. And what I like to say is competence creates confidence. The reason why I'm not nervous when I go on stage or do a webinar or meet a client when it comes to things like Facebook ads is because I've done it thousands of times, right? Are you afraid, Isaac, of you not being able to brush your teeth each day?
Not at all.
Because you've done it many, many times. So
Absolutely.
would you be afraid of brushing your teeth in front of an audience of 1,000 people? Do you think you might screw that up?
No.
You've
Have
done
to
it
be some
thousands.
bad toothpaste. No.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So just start with something that you've done and do it over and over again. Or maybe you drive your car from whatever, you drive it to a nice restaurant. You probably don't even think about hitting the gas or the brake or the steering wheel or watching your speed and staying in the lane and the stop sign that's coming. You're not thinking about all those other things. It creates unconscious competence because you've done that so many times. You're not even thinking about it. And therefore, imposter syndrome never comes into play. What I just said now is an unpopular, unknown opinion. Because it's not about motivating yourself. Oh, yes, you're worth it. Overcome your fear by pretending everyone in the audience is wearing underwear. No, it's get confidence through competence, because you have other people endorsing what you have done, and you can clearly point to a recipe book. So it's not about you. It's not about trying to convince people to know who you are. It's that you have this kind of proof. I'll give you an example. I was on CNN Live in front of 3.5 million people talking about Facebook. And they brought on Mark Zuckerberg, right? So imagine the kind of pressure that's there. And they're asking me, do you think Facebook should be regulated in the same way that cigarettes are being regulated? And I said, Facebook is addictive. Certainly if you're a child, it's not fair that a whole team of PhD scientists are designing an algorithm to keep you there and manipulate your emotions. Don't you think the government needs to step in and put some rules in place, right? Can you imagine how that conversation would have gone down and how much pressure there is live? You can't re-ask the question. I can't say, oh, I didn't like my answer. Can we press rewind and let me say that again in front of a few million people? You only get one shot, right? I'm not Eminem, but the reason why I didn't have any sort of, you would not believe how many people try to use that song on me, right? You would not, the whole point is that I have studied this thing forwards and backwards. I have practiced the thing. A lot of people have not seen the practice. They've not known that I've been running Facebook ads since 2007. And so I've done it many, many times. It's really that simple. Get a ton of practice, document how you've done it. And then what you're standing behind is the fact you have that experience and expertise and the network that supports you. And it's not about your personality. It's not about you being clever. It's not about how good you look. I never have to worry about how I look.
Man, there's a lot to unpack there. And that right there really is the answer, I think. And I like a lot of the points. Dunning-Kruger, I'm going to use that in a training. There's an analogy in Price Pritchett's book, U Squared, about a fly. And this is how he opens up the book. And it's a short 30-page pamphlet, but it's a really great read talking about quantum leaps. And there's this fly that just attacks this window, and it keeps going, and because it sees the outside world. And that's what a lot of these guru coaches, motivational speakers and stuff like that, like there's a time and a place for that. Because I think that it is important sometimes to be motivated or have somebody as an accountability partner, but the fly keeps going through, and a fly's not going to break a window. But what the fly doesn't realize is if he turns 180 degrees, the door is wide open and it can just fly on out. And a lot of times that 180 degree change is becoming competent, having more experience, starting out. And I'm not a big proponent of, I'm not somebody who encourages people to work for free, but rather start out with a couple of clients, right? Smaller scale clients, and then work with those enough. And it's like, I remember my first phone call was a $20 call for a training call talking about personal branding. And at the time, that was pretty much what I was worth because that's what I knew. And then from there, over time, I developed the skill set. I worked with more people. I understood more things. I studied more. And then I applied the knowledge that I learned. You can, like you said, you read 4,500 books or whatever the amount was. If you didn't apply any of that knowledge and that information, it would be absolutely useless. And we could sit here and talk about this specifically for the next hour. But I want to go ahead and talk about, um, man, your career. Let's talk about health. Something that's a little bit different. Something
Sure.
that really isn't super technical, but you've ran 20 plus marathons and a 70-mile ultra marathon, and you're in good shape. And I want to talk about health for you because you started out in college and in high school you were doing cross country and whatnot.
Mhm.
As you've grown older and as you've been building a multi-million-dollar business and everything else, working with these large scale clients like Jake Paul, um, where has health been? And has there been a difficult, like, has there been a struggle trying to manage your health amidst building all of this?
So I think of health in many different facets. I think you're talking more about physical health as opposed to mental health and spiritual health and all these other things, which all go together. You've heard the brand ASICS, right? A
Yes.
lot of people have ASICS Tiger. You know what ASICS stands for?
No, I don't actually. I have a
Animo
pair.
sane. Yeah, it's Latin. It's animo sane and corpore sano, which means a sound mind and a sound body, which means that if you are healthy in the world of business and things are going well in your relationships, for example, then your body is going to be healthy as well. And if your body's not healthy, it's going to spill over into these other areas. And likewise, if you're doing well physically, but then these other parts of your life aren't exactly working very well, it's going to pull your health down, which is called psychosomatic, right? Because you could be working out and fit and all that, but you've got a problem with your girlfriend or job isn't going well, it's going to pull your health down, pull your mood down. So we think that your mind and body work to reinforce each other. So they both have to, if any one thing is down, it's going to pull the whole thing down. And the way I look at health has changed a lot in the last 20 some years. So 20 some years ago, I ran a 407 mile and I ran a 110 half marathon, which is a world-class time, right? I never thought that would have been possible. I was running 100 plus miles per week. I was training with Africans. That was what I did. 5 o'clock in the morning, early morning runs when it's still dark outside, training on the track, working out, eating right. My whole life was dedicated towards being a running machine. I can't do that anymore. I can't spend 4 hours a day working out anymore. So now I think about health, not in terms of how can I run a 4 something mile, but how do I maintain the balance of all these other components? And the older you get, the more you realize how little time you have. You have less and less and less time. You think you're going to do something in the future, you have less and less time. So the way I resolve that is and this is not my idea. I learned this from Grant Cardone. Grant Cardone told this to me one time because I said, Grant, how do you manage all your time? You have so many properties, yet you're on social media all the time and you're traveling and whatnot. And how do you do that? Do you just not sleep? I mean, I see you're working out. And he said, Dennis, what I do is I combine all of them, and I'm grateful for my fans. I'm grateful for all these things, and there is no work-life balance. I said, what do you mean? You can't do everything all the time. I can't just 10x everything that I'm doing. That sounds great, but I can't work 10 times harder. I can't work out 10 times longer. I can't make 10 times more money just by saying I'm going to do 10 times more. It sounds great, doesn't it? And then I learned this. You start to combine these things. So when I'm with Naveen Jain, who runs Viome and has made several multi-billion-dollar companies, we're in San Diego and we're going on a walk together, but we're also recording a podcast. So I'll find with friends of mine that will, like my buddy Frank Chu, who owns a software company for chiropractors. We're playing golf. So we're out there, we're enjoying the air in San Diego, we're playing golf, but we're also doing business. I have other friends of mine. One of my friends is a crypto millionaire, Josh Frazier, and he and I will go jogging. We'll go for a 3-mile jog. And while we're doing a 3-mile jog, we're talking about business and we're having a meal together. And I find with a lot of friends of mine, we're out doing something fun. We're exploring a new country. And we're there also speaking at a conference, and we're teaching at a university, and we're doing business with clients, because what client's not going to want to come along to some cool place like speaking in Bangkok, right? At this really cool stage. Who's not going to want to do that? So find ways that you can combine your health with your business, with your friends, and then it's just this amazing experience. My buddy Alex Berman is a 7-figure agency owner, and he's in Las Vegas, and he basically retired at the age of 25 because he's making so much money without having to do anything, because he set up an agency, he sold some other companies. So he's got all this money that's coming in. He hired a CEO that manages, he's got CEOs for each of his companies. So he doesn't have to do anything and the money just comes in, right? Fantastic. And he and I, what we'll do, he'll hit me up and say, hey, let's go walk the strip. Because when you walk the Las Vegas strip from top to bottom, it's about 6 miles. It's a long way, right? So we'll walk the strip, which is great exercise. And it's a lot of fun and you can people watch and all that. And I'll pull out my phone and we'll record video along the way. We went to Universal Studios a couple of weeks ago, just for fun. He said, hey, let's go to Universal Studios. Sure, that's a 50-minute flight. Let's go this evening. So boom, we just literally just went to Universal Studios. And on the way there, we took an Uber and he said, you know, let's have a little fun. Let's have this entire trip paid for just by selling a couple courses on social media. So we did a Facebook Live at the gate, boarding Southwest Airlines saying, hey, who would like to be able to grow 10,000 followers on Twitter and be able to make their first dollar? Well, we created this course, twitteru.com, right? And we sold a bunch of these courses. I ran some Twitter ads against it, showing how to use Twitter ads to grow your brand. And by the time we boarded the plane, the vacation was already paid for. So we're having fun, making money. We are walking around Universal Studios, going on the different rides. So we're doing all of it at the same time. You see how we're health and business and personal and just having fun. We're able to do all those at the same time. You see how that saves time?
Now, what about the spiritual side of health? Now, mental is another, I get another thing that we could talk about, but more so the spiritual side, because there's a lot of information about vibration and energy and raising, all of this different stuff. And I'm a believer in a lot of that. However, I'd like to get your take on, where do you stand with the spiritual side of success? Maybe talk about the law of attraction, because the law of attraction is seemingly the one thing that everybody talks about, but they don't understand.
A lot of people talk about law of attraction, and that ties in with 5 or 6 other related concepts. Some people might talk about The Secret or manifesting or Think and Grow Rich or Tony Robbins with his different kinds of programs. Some people will talk about how your relationships and your proximity, like who you're around, you're the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. All of those concepts are really the same thing. And that's this: the people that you're with influence and shape and color your perception. So when you mention vibration, you can think of that as translated back to the vibe. So the vibe that other people have, the mindset that they have. People that talk about personal development and being happy, healthy, wealthy, they're all really talking about the same thing. When you're around other people that are successful, that have done the thing that you want to do, even if you do nothing but just be around them, they will rub off on you. Mm-hmm. So it's not a matter of just having a vision board that has a cutout of Ferraris and money and things like that. A lot of people, nothing wrong do that if you want to do that, right? But that's not what we're saying. We're not saying just think about having those things. Or one of the favorite things I hear, Ed Milet's a client of mine. So he'll say, change the background of your phone, your unlock screen, to be that one goal that you want to achieve. So every time you pick up your phone, it reminds you of that one goal. That's a great tip. And certainly you should do that. But more powerful than that, it's putting yourself in the environment to be able to achieve the goal. If you find that you have a goal and you're not achieving it and you're beating yourself up because you don't have the motivation and you're not getting it done, and you think, if I just got motivated more, if I just work harder, and you're beating yourself up over not having done that, the answer is not because of your motivation. The answer is because you haven't put yourself in the right environment. And if you study John Assaraf, he talks about that, NeuroGym and the CEO mindset, on how it's not you that's broken. That's a key thing to realize. It's not about you needing to work harder. Nobody can work 24/7. You're not a machine. You can't always have, a 100% day every single day. We all have down days. That's normal, okay? You can't pretend that those things don't exist. What you do is you put yourself in the right situation, meaning you're around the right people who are achieving the right thing, and they'll affect your mindset. They'll affect your action. You rely upon the energy that they provide. And thus, when you're at that peak moment, which might only be 10% of the time, you can't be operating at peak, right? If you're an athlete, you can't be maxing out every single hour. That just, your body doesn't allow you to do that. But when you prime yourself with enough rest for that moment when it's competition time and you have everything else stacked in the right way, that's when you win. So you could look at Usain Bolt or whatever, right? The guy
Mhm.
runs 9 seconds in the 100 meters. Do you think every day he's running a 9 second 100 meter? Do you think he's not resting? Do you think he doesn't have days where he's training really hard and his body's sore and all that? That's all part of the natural progression. So I think of mindset, spirituality, vibration, relationships, the business processes that you have. All of those are really part of the same thing, because if you're around people that are losers, guess what you're going to become? A loser, right? And you might think, oh, I can pull these other people up because
Mhm.
I can maintain my mindset and I'm stronger than them. You're going to find those other people will pull you down. So the biggest change I see, especially for young adults, is get yourself in the right situation. If you're around a bunch of loser friends and all they do is play video games, there's nothing wrong with playing video games. But if that's what you want to do, play video games, right? But if you're in the wrong crowd, no amount of listening to your favorite podcast or whatever is going to be able to change that. You have to actually change your environment. Changing your environment causes all these other stacking changes to occur.
Now, let's say we have a young guy or a young gal who's, in the early 20s and they have that friend group that is negative, that is kind of pulling them down. I've been in situations like that myself, and I had to fly across the country to get away from that situation just because it wasn't good. What
Yeah.
would be your number one tip, or I don't want to use some cliche word like, what would you say to that person who needs to change their environment if they're truly serious about their goal? Like, how would you go about that if you were young Dennis and instead of hanging around, the parents and going to choate, instead you were in a bad situation? What would you do looking back?
I would use the power of the internet. Just like you and I are hanging out on Facebook and Twitter and whatnot, there has never been a better opportunity to make it easier to connect with other people. Look how easy it was for you and I to connect, right? If you follow these other, and by the way, don't make it Grant Cardone or Elon Musk or people like that. Have people that are one or two levels below that are still very successful, and follow their content, study their content. It's free. Look at their stuff
Mhm.
on YouTube. Look at my stuff on YouTube or whatever it is. It's free. Look at these podcasts, right? With Isaac, it's free, right? All that stuff is out there for free. And so you can change one part of your environment, which is where you spend your time and what you consume. And if you want to listen to random kinds of music, you can, but I would reprogram your mind. Be very careful about what you put into your mind. So first change what that input is of where you're learning, and that will cause you to change your physical proximity. Because when you are in virtual proximity on social media, it's so close. You're just one tweet away from getting access to these various people. You build that relationship and you show you're serious. So Isaac, you said, yeah, how does someone change if they're in a bad situation and they're serious? That's the part people miss. If you're serious, you're willing to put in that time, and you're also willing to say no when friends say, hey, let's go to the park and do whatever. Let's go get drunk at this girl's house, right? And the peer
Hmm.
pressure is like, oh, yeah, let's go do that. And then you never have time for the thing that you want to do, even though you had this good intention that you were going to change things around. If you don't actually prioritize it, it's never going to happen. So you're going to have to say no to a lot of the activities that you would have said yes to. And that's going to cause a lot of people saying, oh, Isaac, come on, man, let's go to the bars tonight. And then what do you have to say when people try to pull you out into that? What do you say when people try to pull you into that situation?
I just say no, and I'm no longer in situations to where that's even an indication because I'm so picky with my friend group. Because there was a time where I was in a situation like that, except I was too young to even go out to the bars. But it would be bringing the influence home to where you could consume it, which is in some ways even worse at times. And then the peer pressure is real, and then you have to like say no, and then you
Yeah.
become the oddball out. And then from there, if you're the oddball out, then doesn't that's an indicator that you need to leave, that you need to change situations,
That's
and
it. That's the
it's
key.
scary. It's
Yep.
scary, but
Got to
it's
make that change. It's
I believe
tough.
necessary. And I had a
Otherwise,
friend
you're going to be
group
just
who,
like them. The people you're around, you're going to be just like
yep,
them. Is that what you want?
nope, no, and those are the difficult questions and difficult situations that you kind of have to take a step back and do some deep reflection. And I had a conversation with one of the friends who was in that group, but him and I always were more business minded and more serious. Like we prioritize work first, or try to. And we
Right.
were talking about some of the other friends that were in that group, and very few have done anything since, over the past couple of years. And I'm
Yeah.
like, what happened? And that's not by coincidence. And I've really enjoyed the conversation, Dennis. And I want to ask one more question pertaining to Blitzmetrics, because this is your baby, this is your company that you're building, and you've been in business for over a decade, and that's not by coincidence either. And so, what has been one of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome with your business, to where, like, was there ever a time where you just were thinking that the entire, like, the roof was going to fall down and cave in under you, and how did you get out of that situation?
If I told you there were never challenges, I'd be lying to you, as any entrepreneur would. But the one thing I've never questioned or worried about, thank goodness, is whether the systems and processes that we teach work. I don't have to worry about whether gravity works or not. I don't have to worry about whether recipes work or not, right? These things like what we put together with Jake Paul, I don't have to worry about that. I know it works. I don't have to pray in the morning. And look, nothing wrong with going to church. Nothing wrong with, giving your life to Jesus and putting in the center of your journey and making decisions. Nothing wrong with having a great attitude and all that. But if you think about the systems and processes that are necessary to have a machine work, then you're able to focus on working on the machine instead of being in the machine like an employee. So let me make that a little bit more specific. So with the company that I built, it's about taking something that, how to make your first $10,000 selling the course, or how to get 10,000 followers, whatever it might be. And knowing with complete confidence, not because I'm just pretending or just wishfully believing, knowing that these things work because I've done it many times, to then get other people to be successful. For example, we have hundreds of young adults that have started digital marketing agencies following our process, going to local businesses, choosing a niche, whatever it might be, could be orthodontists, could be Italian restaurants, whatever it is, and then say, hey, I can help you get more results in Google. I can help your website get more leads. I can drive more sales. I can make your phone ring more. And they have complete confidence because they're following a recipe book that's been done many, 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 many times. So I have no issues or fear about whether that works because we've been doing it for many, many years. But the part that we've struggled, and this has even happened even as of today, this still happens, is we get these young adults and they come into the program and they have all the best intention, but for some reason they fail because they can't keep it up. They can't be reliable, right? Just like when people go to church and they're love bombed and they feel so good, but then Monday morning rolls around and they lose the passion. You know what I'm talking about? They lose that feeling and it's hard to get back to where they were. So then they're up on Sunday and they're all motivated, and then they go down again and they're back up again. So they do this yo-yo, just like people with dieting, the same kind of thing. And the biggest challenge I've had is you'll have these young adults who are very intelligent, who have all the best, well-meaning, wanting to succeed. At that moment, they want to do all these things and they said yes in the most earnest kind of way, but then for some reason they can't follow through. They can't follow through on doing the steps that we've laid out in these books, or they get overwhelmed, or they have fear, or we give them clients and they're just scared to pick up the phone. I know it. I'm scared too sometimes, right? I can imagine when I first started 20 some years ago, I didn't want to call so-and-so, like, oh my goodness, I might sound like an idiot. So I just push it off. I make excuses, whatever it might be. That's the biggest challenge. Let's see, in the last year, I started an agency, Cairo Revenue, one of many agencies, and we went from no clients to 80 clients as a 7-figure business. Pretty awesome, right? And I spoke at a conference, drove a whole bunch of clients, promoted that agency through all the connections that I have and the knowledge and the processes and the checklist, built a whole brand around it. Then I put a CEO in charge of it, Tristan Parmley, right? Nobody. You can look up his name. There's nothing there related to digital marketing. Maybe a couple of things where he ran 100 meters in track and field. And initially he was successful for the first few months because I grew this agency. I drove all the sales, I put all this money into growing it and put him as the CEO of this agency. And then what does he do? One night when we're not paying attention, he takes all the assets and he renames them to another company, calls it Lead Cure, and then locks us all out. And then declares on social media that he has a 7-figure agency all of a sudden overnight. And meanwhile, Cairo Revenue is bankrupt. And then he says, Dennis screwed up this company and now it's dead. But look, I've got a 7-figure agency when it's the exact same client list, exact same assets. You can go to the Cairo Revenue LinkedIn or Cairo Revenue Facebook, and you'll see it's just been renamed to Lead Cure. And then we see that kind of behavior, right? So you wonder how is that possible? How do you inoculate against someone doing something like that? And that's been the biggest challenge, because you can have the best systems and processes and checklists. Well, what happens when you get a Tristan Parmley who decides, you know what? I want to steal. I don't want to wait several years to be successful. I want to just go ahead, and if I can grab it and if I can win at any cost, hey, I want to win at any cost. I'm willing to do anything, including steal from other people in order to disrespect mentors, lie and claim that this is all mine, right? I'm willing to do all of that because I'm so wrapped up in the idea that I just need to be successful and I need to tell everyone how successful I am, that I'm willing to do that kind of thing. I think that in the world of young adults, I'm not saying all young adults are like Tristan Parmley, but in the world of young adults, would you agree, Isaac, that there's this, I need to be successful in order to have even some kind of self-worth? That
It's, yeah,
right?
definitely a direct association, likes, followers, comments, numbers, and it's addicting. It's a dopamine hit. And that's the same thing about Facebook keeping you locked in with the algorithm. And this is a prime example for anybody listening about reputation management, because the business interactions you have, if you screw somebody over, you're going to have somebody who has the balls to do what Dennis just did. And well, now we all know about the guy, And so it's like that right there is an example of why you
Relationships
need
are
to treat.
everything.
Yeah,
Yep.
relationships are everything. I couldn't agree more. And maintaining that very strong reputation to where there's a reason why I haven't done a course yet. And when I am ready to get a course, I know exactly who I'm going to talk to. I want to talk to you because I've never wanted to put out a course prematurely. There's one audio course that I did. I was listed to become a mentor to talk on a site called Listenable. And other than that, I've not done any course because I've had this fear, not imposter syndrome, but this fear because I am a young guy and I wanted to get the roster of clients set first, the reputation, the reviews, because of people online similar to him who are willing to win at any cost to them and ultimately screw over a lot of different people because they just want the dollar. And there's a reason why I haven't done a course yet. And so, man, Dennis, I've absolutely loved the conversation. And what you were touching on was delegation, right? There's a positive side to delegation, but if you delegate to the wrong people, then it can completely disrupt your business, or in this case, millions of dollars worth of revenue over the
Yep.
span of a decade.
Yeah.
What are some of the warning signs for delegation? We could talk all day about the pros of delegation and what to look for, the positive characteristics, but what about the negative red flags that you might see looking back that you weren't even aware of when you first brought him on as CEO?
Well, when you have a Tristan Parmley, who I call the charming thief, you want to believe in other people, right? I mean, who doesn't want to expect the best of their friends? Who doesn't want to help someone who is completely broke and you could see they have a lot of potential and they tell you a sob story about these things that have happened and you want to help them, right? You ever heard of a con man or the idea of a con?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So what does that, what does con stand for?
What does that stand for?
Confidence. So a con man is a confidence man. So why is it called confidence man? Because it's not that they're confident. See, a lot of people think, oh yeah, con man, I know con stands for confidence. And so they're very confident when they sell you.
Hmm.
Wrong. That's not what confidence man stands for. A con man is one who relies upon your confidence to get you to invest in that deal. Or the Nigerian prince who supposedly died and wants to give you $10 million or whatever. You've seen these sorts of things, right? They're relying upon your confidence that this deal is working. So what they're trying to do is instill confidence in that you have because of some kind of, and usually it ties to greed. So your confidence that this is a deal that's underlined by your greed, and your greed is willing to have you, will cause you blindness to overlook some very obvious kinds of things. So when people are emotionally in a situation, it causes them to throw out logic. So here's the thing I want you to think about and apply to any situation in life. And this is something that I've learned the hard way and I'm still learning it every single day. So Isaac, when you drink something, right? Let's say I'm drinking this cocoon water because I'm thirsty. And I take a sip. Now this comes down my esophagus into my stomach, right? But you and I, this whole time, and our audience, we've been breathing. And when we breathe, that goes down the trachea into our lungs. So what is it that governs because it goes down the same pipe, what is it that governs if it goes to our stomach versus if it goes to our lungs?
The brain.
The brain, but are you thinking about it? Because you can breathe and you can talk and you can drink, but somehow the body's able to put it down the right pipe, right?
Yep.
So there's something that allows you, it's called the epiglottis, that it goes down the pipe and one side goes to the stomach and one side goes to the lungs. And this is how the brain works as well. So whenever your brain is processing things, it's thinking emotionally or it's thinking rationally. So when you're working with the con man, they're trying to emotionally get you to make decisions. So you emotionally, you're like, I identify with this person. I love their story. Simon Sinek, start with why. That's how you get people to buy, right? Emotionally, you get them to agree. You see the starving pet, so you make the donation during Christmas, right? Because you see, animals in the shelter, whatever. It's tied to your emotion. That's decision making. But when people are thinking emotionally, they can't think rationally. So rationally is logical calculation, critical thinking, deciding whether this is a good deal or not, what is it worth, right? Kind of the math behind it. So it's the same way that when you bring something into your throat, is it going to your stomach or is it going to your lungs? And so you have to balance both of them, but you can't, here's the thing. If I drink some water, I can't have it go down to my lungs and my stomach at the same time. It's only going down one pipe or the other. It can't be both. So if you have a healthy personality, a healthy mind and brain, then your epiglottis is switching back and forth so many times that you're able to balance thinking logically with thinking emotionally. But what a con man does, and this is how I got tricked by Tristan Parmley, is he told me such a good story about how he came from the hood and how he got screwed over by these other people who robbed him and all that. And I should have spotted, wow, this guy kept talking about how many times he was robbed. Maybe he's a robber, right? People who talk about this one thing way too many times, it sounds like you may be guilty of that same thing. And so I was thinking emotionally, and I forgot to think logically, like, well, if this guy's so good, how come I don't see a track record of him having, when I Googled Tristan Parmley, I don't see any evidence of him having done digital marketing before successfully. So if I was thinking logically, it's because I can think emotionally. I'm not saying never think emotionally, but you have to consciously think, okay, I've been thinking emotionally. We talked about his story. I feel empathy, but then wait, I need to think logically. Does this make sense? And sometimes we're thinking about something logically. For example, how many times, Isaac, have you seen a CEO make an announcement like, oh, we just acquired this company, now we're going to lay off 50,000 people, right? And you think this guy is totally heartless. He's just trying to make more money for Wall Street. So logically that makes the most sense, but he's also a cold, heartless asshole, right? So you want to balance between thinking emotionally and thinking logically. So when a con man comes to you, like a Tristan Parmley, he's going to try to get you to think emotionally by telling his story. But then what you want to see is, wait, logically, does this make sense? Are there reference customers? He says he's got 80 clients. Where'd those clients come from? He says all of a sudden in 2 or 3 weeks, he went from nothing to having a 7-figure business. And he used to be working with Dennis Yu. What happened there, right? Logically, investigator, detective mode. What happened there, right? So you have to balance both of those. And that's my advice to you guys as young adults is, some people where you see they're like huge like this, but then you see they skip leg day, right? So you got to balance your arms with your legs. You got to do both. So think emotionally and start to get pro at that. Start to think logically on how to determine when something's BS or when something's a great deal and how to prioritize, but you got to do both. You see?
Yeah, I was about to say, because that goes directly with purchasing decisions too, because based off of the research and what professor you listen to and what scientists you listen to, some people say 80% of purchasing decisions goes to the emotional side, and then some people say 95%. Regardless, it's a significant amount, just like the unconscious, right? The subconscious side of the brain manages, like you were talking about with the trachea and esophagus, it manages 70 to 80% of everything we do, if not more. It's like you're comparing a pea to the size of a building. Yeah. And we have to learn how to consciously control those decisions and control our instincts. And, there's nothing wrong with paying attention to your instincts either, because your instincts might be emotional, but at the same time, there's some logic that usually backs up your instincts, especially talking to somebody. Yeah. I didn't know that information. It feels like I'm off of my A game right now, but this entire podcast, the reason it is because I've been so focused into paying attention to you, and this has never happened with a guest before. I'm forgetting I'm asking questions. And it's been quite an honor.
No, Isaac, that is literally what you said there shows that you have unconscious competence, right? When you know what you're doing, you don't have to be thinking about, oh, wait, I can't listen to what Dennis is saying because I got to queue up the next question in my head. And so if you're constantly queuing up the next question, because I got to keep it going, because what if I run out of questions and then we're just standing there both looking at each other? No, you're enjoying the moment. You're absorbing it. It's called serendipity. So when you're participating and you're fully in it and you're paying attention, you forget that we're in Zoom and you're a podcast host. We're having a great conversation, unless that brings in the listeners, because then they're able to participate too, right? Think about the most natural conversations when you built rapport with a friend, when you're having a good time. Like, what is it when you're with friends and it just feels right? Like, what is it that determines rapport? versus when, okay, now I've got to list these questions. Now I'm going to ask this question, now this question, now this question. Then it's mechanical, right? How
Right.
is it that what is it that determines rapport and you have a good vibe when you just know you're friends and it's a good vibe versus, okay, I know I'm technically doing this stuff, but it feels weird, right? You see what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't even have a list of questions. I found that whenever I plan out topics or whenever I plan out questions, I'm going to trip over myself. So instead, I write down notes, topics to where I might ask a question based off of where the conversation goes. That's where I go. So I think I have one more question, and then I want to be respectful of your time. And I think this might be the most important question of all. You love chicken wings. What's your favorite sauce?
I love just a basic dry rub.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Parmesan
Favorite.
garlic or lemon pepper.
Okay.
I like salt and vinegar, which is kind of a weird flavor, but I think that's kind of cool on chicken wings. I
Interesting.
have a sauce that I like to make myself, and it's a raspberry chipotle sauce. So it's
I
this
need to
hot
bottle
and
that.
spicy raspberry sauce. Now, a lot of people don't realize that fruit and meat actually go together because of the chemical compounds between the both. But if you take raspberry and you add some chili to it and you mix it up together and you put it as a glaze on the chicken wings when they're cooking part way, not at the beginning, but you just add a couple layers along the way and then at the end you finish. It is the most delicious stuff. And you can use chicken wings, make your own raspberry chipotle sauce, put it in an air fryer, cook it at 370 degrees for 20 minutes, and it is amazing.
Most important question right there. Value drop. I'm
Yeah.
gonna need you to bottle up some of that sauce and send it my way. No, Dennis, man, it has been such a pleasure, and I look forward to staying in touch and supporting you in whatever way I can. So, where can people find you? And then when your podcast drops, that's going to be called Coach You, and that's going to be available on every single platform
Right.
because I know Zach's going to get you right. I don't know if you're working with him, but imagine you might. So, where can people
My
find you?
coach, Zach, he's great. You can find me anywhere on the internet or on social media. Just Google me, right? My last name is Yu. It's spelled Y-U. If you like to consume YouTube, if you want to be on Twitter, if you want to be on Facebook, if you like podcasts, like whatever it is, I'm there in whatever your channel is to be able to connect and consume.
There we go. Well, Dennis, brother, thank you again. And guys, you just got done listening to another amazing episode of Chase the Vision with Isaac Mashman with a guest who just dropped so much value. You guys need to listen through this a couple of different times. Take notes, pay attention, and make sure you're following Dennis. Until next time, expect monologues every single Monday and interviews with awesome guests like Dennis every single Friday.